It's 7:30 in the evening across India. I am Tanvi Taneja. Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India Global. We'll bring you the day's big stories from across India and the world. My colleague Benji Haya is joining me from Washington, D.C. today. Benji, good to see you.
Good morning, Tanvi. It's 9 a.m. here in Washington, D.C., 3 in the afternoon across Central Europe. Coming up in the next 30 minutes, a Biden-Trump rematch. Our team in the U.S. takes us through next year's election drama, but the White House's attention is currently being drawn to America's southern border amid what critics of the administration here view as a migrant crisis. Also, the latest on the Ukraine-Russia war as Western states vow to back Kiev. We'll have the latest from the ground, but first, back to you for the headlines.
French President Emmanuel Macron to be the chief guest for India's Republic Day celebrations in January 2024. Kremlin warns it will not let a country live in peace if it tries to seize Russian assets, adds would respond in kind to any Western seizure of its assets. UN Security Council again postpones vote on crucial Gaza aid resolution due to US disagreement. Israel broadens its offensive in Gaza. And Pakistan's Supreme Court grants bail to Imran Khan in the alleged state secrets leak case. The former Prime Minister files nomination papers for the 2024 national elections. French President Emmanuel Macron will be visiting India to attend the 75th Republic Day celebrations as the chief guest. India and France share a high degree of convergence on a range of regional and global issues. Year 2023 is being celebrated as the 25th anniversary of the India-France strategic partnership. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi was the guest of honor at the Bastille Day parade in Paris. President Macron visited India for the G20 summit on 8th and 9th of September in 2023. And DD India's Ross Cullen joins us live from Paris on this story. Ross, the French president will be the chief guest at India's Republic Day celebrations in January next year. This is the 6th time that a French president will figure as the Republic Day chief guest. What does this say for the abiding strength of India-France relations? I'm afraid we're not able to hear you, Ross, at the moment. We'll come back to you. Moving on now, getting you the latest from the Israel-Hamas conflict. The Israeli army released videos of ground operation in Beit Hanun. Israeli forces signaled they were widening their ground offensive. Israel's government under Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has vowed to neutralize Hamas after its fighters launched a cross-border raid on October the 7th. The Israeli army also released a video showing destruction of a tunnel inside Hamas's elite quarter in Gaza. The IDF said that the terror infrastructure included a large network of strategic underground tunnels which connect hideouts and bureaus belonging to senior military and political leadership of Hamas. The Israeli army also released videos showing strikes in Lebanon targeting Hezbollah's rocket launch sites. Meanwhile, UN Security Council diplomats further delayed until Friday a vote on a resolution to increase humanitarian aid into Gaza. The UN vote was delayed despite the United States saying that it can now support an amended proposal that would demand that Israel and Hamas allow the use of all available routes for humanitarian deliveries. A US-led coalition with over 20 participating countries is safeguarding commercial traffic in the Red Sea from attacks by Yemen's Houthi movement. The initiative, named Operation Prosperity Guardian, began 2 days ago, aiming to conduct joint patrols near Yemen. However, most nations involved have chosen not to publicly disclose their participation due to political sensitivities. Vessels are avoiding the Suez Canal due to the risk of attacks, and the Panama Canal faces restrictions amid drought, though its traffic hasn't notably increased. Meanwhile, attacks by Yemen's Houthi group are forcing vessels to divert or switch their transponders off. And going now back to our top story, where French President Emmanuel Macron has been invited to be the chief guest at the Republic Day celebrations of India in January next year. So as we are speaking about it, Ross, this is the 6th time that a French president will figure as the chief guest at the Republic Day celebrations. What does this say for the abiding strength of India-France relations?
Well, Narendra Modi was here in July for the French National Day celebrations, for Bastille Day, the 14th of July, as the guest of honour, and there were Indian Air Force jets flying alongside their French counterparts, taking part in the military flypast, that element of the parade. And the trip was seen as so successful by Narendra Modi that he has extended this invitation to the French president to attend a Republic Day in just over a month's time at the end of January in India, to be the guest of honour there, just as Narendra Modi was the guest of honour here. And we have had that confirmation today, Friday, from the Élysée Palace, the French presidency, that Emmanuel Macron has accepted that invitation from Narendra Modi. So he will be heading to India just a few months after his most recent visit, which was for the G20 summits on the 9th and 10th of September, already showing that they are booking these trips in ahead. They want to get that confirmation. They want to show that these trips and these regular conversations between the two men who call each other my friend or my dear friend, Mr. Modi and Mr. Macron, that relationship continues to build.
And Ross, would you agree that the oneness of principles and the commonality of interests between India and France will ensure that relations between the two will continue to prosper and strengthen in the years ahead?
Yeah, there was only one, the trip from Narendra Modi here to France. He was awarded the Legion of Honour, France's top Order of Merit, which was criticised by some French MPs. But apart from that, that was the trip went so well that they really do believe they are building on this. And if we look at the France-India relationship as a whole, there are so many sectors in which Delhi and Paris work together. From business, there are Indian companies like Tata and Mahindra here in France. There are French companies like L'Oréal or Danone or Total operating in India. France has a plan to try to welcome up to 30,000 Indian students here in France in the next 7 years. Also aviation, worth mentioning that this year, the 2023 Paris Air Show, the biggest ever aircraft order was placed, and that was from Indigo, an Indian company, ordering 500 Airbus planes, a pan-European company, but Airbus is headquartered here in France. And also the Indo-Pacific. France sees the Indian Ocean as a domestic arena, with the islands of Réunion, Mayotte and other islands as well. It has 1.5 million citizens in the Indian and Pacific Oceans, and so that whole area is a key geopolitical influence for France and, of course, for India. And that will be a topic which will be touched on in their talks in January in Delhi, when Emmanuel Macron makes his trip there.
All right. Thank you, Ross. Ross Cullen reporting to us from Paris. On to the United States now. The 2024 presidential election will matter not just for the United States, but for the entire world. A rematch between Joe Biden and Donald Trump seems very likely. My colleague Benji Hayer is in Washington, D.C. He gives us more on this and other stories making headlines around the world. Benji, seems like swing voters will decide the course of next year's election.
As ever, Tanvi, the destiny of American democracy is in the hands of a few key battleground states, and they'll likely be deciding between two men who've battled it out before for the building behind me. A Biden-Trump rematch next year seems increasingly probable, according to polls, but both men will go into that race lacking popularity, so much so that some polls suggest as much as a fifth of the electorate here falls into the so-called double haters category, those who are disillusioned by both Biden and Trump. DD India's Nick Harper reports from Washington.
In US politics, two parties dominate: Joe Biden's Democrats and Donald Trump's Republicans. But a growing group of voters are looking for something different.
I declare my independence. I declare my independence.
I declare my independence.
It's that independent spirit and dislike of establishment politics that some outsider candidates are hoping to tap into.
I'm here to declare myself an independent candidate.
Robert F. Kennedy Jr., the nephew of the late former President John F. Kennedy, is running without the backing of a party, as is progressive academic and activist Cornel West.
We got a choice between neo-fascists like Brother Trump or milquetoast neoliberals like Brother Biden.
A bipartisan group known as No Labels is also looking for a high-profile candidate to mount a presidential challenge, all of which could spell trouble for Biden and Trump, pulling votes away from them in what is expected to be a tight race.
There are some lapsed Republicans who don't like Trump, but also maybe don't like Biden and probably disapprove of his job performance. You know, I can imagine some of those folks going into the no labels camp. And I think this is why Democrats are much more worried about no labels than Republicans are, because the feeling is that the Republican base is sort of more solid behind Trump.
But to secure votes, these independent candidates first need to get on the ballot in each of the 50 US states. And that requires thousands, sometimes hundreds of thousands of signatures from supporters. These outsider challengers appear to pose more of a threat to incumbent Joe Biden, but opinions could change in the coming months.
When it comes to the polls ahead of the election, people are much more likely to say that they're considering a third-party candidate and much less likely to vote when election day comes. People get cold feet and they decide at the very end that they don't want to waste their vote.
If all of this wasn't already enough to make getting into the White House practically a mathematical impossibility, there's also the small matter of history. Importantly, an independent candidate has never won in a modern US presidential election. But if they manage to win over just a few thousand disaffected voters in key battleground states, they might do enough to alter the outcome, preventing an establishment Democrat or Republican from winning in November. Nick Harper in Washington, reporting for DD India.
Staying in the US President Joe Biden and his Mexican counterpart López Obrador have agreed in a telephone conversation that more enforcement is needed at the border of the two countries amid an escalating migrant crisis. The White House says the US Secretary of State Antony Blinken will travel to Mexico in the coming days for a meeting with Obrador. The two will discuss ways to address border challenges. Thousands of migrants, mainly from Central America, have been trying to enter the United States via Mexico. US Treasury Janet Yellen says President Joe Biden will sign an executive order allowing Washington to impose sanctions on financial institutions that help Russia evade sanctions. In a statement, Yellen said the executive order also gives Washington the ability to ban products originating in Russia but processed in third countries, such as seafood and diamonds. Senior officials hope this will make it clear to financial institutions that they must either stop allowing their companies to ship goods to the Russian defense sector or face significant sanctions. Meanwhile, Ukraine on Friday claimed it shot down 24 of 28 attack drones launched overnight by Russia. At least 2 injuries were reported in the capital, Kyiv. Russia's defense ministry says their forces intercepted 5 Ukrainian drones south of Moscow. With the latest on that conflict, DD India's Megumi Lim reports from Kyiv.
Loud explosions were heard overnight in the capital as air defense systems worked to intercept drones launched by Russia. Ukraine's Air Force said its air defenses shot down 24 out of 28 attack drones across the country. But one drone hit a high-rise apartment block in Kyiv's Solomiansky district, causing a fire on the upper floors. 2 people were injured from the attack and 1 is being treated in hospital. The building is located a few hundred meters from a maternity hospital. Officials said drone fragments also fell on a house under construction in the Darnietsky district, setting it on fire. Drone debris also fell on an apartment building south of the city center. This was the 6th such attack on Kyiv this month. Megumi Lim in Kyiv reporting for DD India.
More on that conflict. The Dutch government is preparing for an initial delivery of 18 F-16 fighter jets to Ukraine. The Netherlands Prime Minister Mark Rutte says the delivery of the jets is one of the most important elements of the agreements made on military support for Ukraine. The country wants to ensure agreement is reached at the European Council meeting in February 2024 on financial backing from the EU. This as the Kremlin sends out a stern warning that it will not let another nation live in peace if it tries to seize Russian assets. The statement comes following suggestions among Western political leaders, as we were hearing about earlier, about handing over frozen Russian assets worth $300 billion to Ukraine. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov says any such seizure would deal a serious blow to the international financial system, and Russia, he insists, would defend its rights in the courts. Now, tributes have been pouring in a day after a shooting at a university in the Czech capital Prague, which claimed at least 14 lives and injured dozens more. Czech Prime Minister Petr Fiala joined mourners at a memorial in the city. Earlier, the country's president declared December 23rd as a day of mourning. The Charles University has cancelled all lectures and events. This as police tighten security around schools and other public buildings across the nation. The United Nations World Food Programme says it's temporarily suspended assistance in some part of Sudan's state of Gaza as fighting spreads from the capital, Khartoum. Roughly 300,000 people have fled Gaza in a matter of days since clashes broke out last week. DD India's Patrick Oyat has more details from South Sudan's capital, Juba.
The World Food Programme says it has suspended operations due to escalating violence in the state. Fighting between Sudan's armed forces and the paramilitary rapid support forces is spreading from Sudan's capital, Khartoum, to the south and east of the country. The UN Food Programme has been providing aid to more than 800,000 people, many of whom had escaped fighting in Khartoum and settled in Jazeera. The state is the breadbasket of Sudan, and half of all wheat produced in the country comes from Jazeera. An average of 350,000 metric tons of wheat is harvested annually, enough to feed around 6 million people. The state is also home to the Jazeera Agricultural Scheme, one of the largest gravity-fed irrigation projects in the world. It is a source of income and livelihood for millions of people. Now, the area is being abandoned by residents and those who had sheltered there after fleeing Khartoum. The World Food Programme says nearly 18 million people in Sudan are acutely food insecure due to disruptions in economic activities caused by the ongoing fighting. In Juba, Patrick Oyet reporting for DD India.
Our correspondent there in South Sudan. That's it from me here in Washington, at least. Back to you in the studio.
Thank you very much, Benji. Benji Hire joining us from Washington, D.C. You're watching DD India Global with me, Tanvi and Benji. Still to come on the show. UK's economy might be in a recession, according to data that showed that the country's GDP shrank between July and September. And India boosts artificial intelligence over its traditional methods to build climate models to revolutionize weather forecasting.
We just don't bring you the news as it unfolds. We get to the heart of the matter.
We don't just present facts. We demystify complex social, political, and economic events.
We break stories that shape the world's present and future because you deserve the truth.
I am Tanvi Taneja from New Delhi.
I'm Ollie Barrett from London.
I'm Nick Harper from Washington, D.C.
Join us on DD India Global Monday to Friday at these times.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India Global and I am Tanvi Taneja. Next news from Asia. Pakistan is gearing up for its high-voltage elections scheduled to take place in February. Former Prime Minister Imran Khan has submitted his nomination papers for the upcoming elections from prison cell in Adiala jail. The latest development came after Pakistan's former Prime Minister Imran Khan got relief from the Supreme Court on Friday. Khan got bail from Supreme Court in a case related to an alleged leak of state secrets. General elections are scheduled to be held in Pakistan on 8th of February next year to elect the members of the 16th National Assembly. Islamabad police, meanwhile, have released all women protesters after 26 hours of detention on the 28th day of the movement against Baloch genocide. Despite the release of all the female protesters, concerns linger as over 200 male activists remain in the police custody. Japan has approved record defense budget to counter China and North Korea. The country has finalized its record $54.25 billion defense budget for the upcoming fiscal year. The 2024 budget has an increase of about 17% from the previous year's spending. This is the second consecutive year in which the country increased its spending as it seeks to strengthen defense in a complex security environment in the region. More from Asia. Death toll from the 6.2 magnitude earthquake in northwest China has climbed to 148, with 117 killed in Gansu province alone. As of Friday morning, 781 people are reported to be injured in Gansu, while Qinghai province recorded 31 casualties and 198 injuries. The Quake Response Command said that search and rescue efforts in Gansu have concluded, with no more missing individuals reported. However, 282 people remain hospitalized, including 17 in critical condition. Now, Indian capital New Delhi's average air quality index reached 409 on Friday, prompting the subcommittee for the Graded Response Action Plan to invoke Stage 3 measures immediately across the national capital. The 8-point action plan includes steps such as daily water sprinkling, along with dust suppressants, ensuring proper disposal of the collected dust in designated sites, intensifying public transport services, and enforcing strict ban on construction and demolition activities in the entire NCR, barring certain projects. India's actions against climate change, its concrete result-oriented efforts have paved the way for artificial intelligence to build climate models which would help improve weather forecasting. We have a report.
Extreme weather events have killed nearly 3,000 people this year. Global warming has triggered more intense clashes of weather systems in India in recent years, leading to increase in extreme weather conditions. India's Met Department has been utilizing artificial intelligence for public alerts on heat waves and diseases like malaria, and plans to expand weather observatories, which will offer data at the village level for potentially more precise forecasts. Renewed focus on gathering high-resolution data and incorporating AI into traditional models will aid emerging technologies that will help achieve its sustainable development goals. AI-based systems can predict harsh impacts of climate change and events with higher levels of accuracy by giving accurate data to predict events such as rise in sea levels, cyclones, storms, less or more rainfall, even glacial outbursts. While technological evolution continues to aid regular efforts to achieve net zero emissions, climate tech investments could see a significant rise in the future. Bureau Report, DD India.
India's pledge campaign, the Viksit Bharat Sankalp Yatra, is being undertaken across the country with the aim to attain saturation of flagship government schemes through ensuring that the benefits of these schemes reach all targeted beneficiaries in a time-bound manner. The yatra has arrived in the districts of Farrukhabad in the North Indian state of Uttar Pradesh. The local communities responded to it with great enthusiasm and active engagement. The IC vans at the centre of the Viksit Bharat Sankalp Yatra have emerged as a dynamic tool as it continues to traverse various blocks of the districts. Addressing the 20th Subrata Mukherjee seminar on Friday, Air Force Chief, Air Chief Marshal added that India's growing indigenous defence capability has already opened the doors for partnerships and exports.
We have increased the footprint of training and cooperation with these nations, and the Indian Air Force conducts regular training programs for these partner nations, sharing best practices in the field of operations and maintenance. The roles played by our Indian military advisory teams deployed at many of these countries, and courses offered through the Indian Technical and Economic Cooperation Program, the ITEC programs, have paved the way for increased cooperation. Such programs have focused on capacity building and human resource development.
And now we take a look at what else is happening around the world. UK's economy might be in a recession, according to data that showed the country's GDP shrank between July and September this year. This happened after Finance Minister Jeremy Hunt suggested that the Bank of England might cut interest rates to boost growth. Some estimates suggest that the United Kingdom has the weakest post-pandemic economic recovery in the G7 grouping after Germany. Traffic on the cross-channel Eurotunnel will gradually resume following an agreement with the unions. Eurotunnel has confirmed that a last-minute strike by French workers, which halted trains on Thursday, is now over. Eurostar will resume a normal timetable out of London, Paris and Brussels on Friday. Heavy snow blanketed parts of China's Shandong province, leading to the suspension of traffic in the affected areas. 9 highway sections in Shandong were closed. 21 bus routes have been halted, and long-distance bus station in the city of Weihai has also temporarily suspended operation. Now, revellers gathered at Stonehenge in Wiltshire, Britain, to celebrate the winter solstice on Friday, marking the shortest day of the year in the Northern Hemisphere. Dating back 5,000 years, Stonehenge attracts people from various backgrounds every year to commemorate both the winter and summer solstices. Aligned with the midsummer sunrise and midwinter sunset, the ancient site holds significance worldwide. And ahead of Christmas Day on 25th of December, people across the world are soaking in the festive cheer in more ways than one. Take a look.
In Spain, the annual El Gordo Christmas lottery draw kicked off on Friday at Madrid's Royal Theatre, where school children called out the winning numbers that will spread €2.95 billion across the country. In Thailand, 5 elephants dressed as Santa Claus handed out gifts to school children. 2,000 students welcomed the elephants with song and dance. Kenya's capital, Nairobi, dazzled in Christmas decorations as Kenyans were determined to share the joy and warmth of the festive season despite suffering a year of adversities. In Japan's capital, Tokyo, nearly 300 office workers traded their business attire for Santa Claus suits in an annual event of gift-giving and interaction with passers-by. Meanwhile, parts of South Africa's Johannesburg was decked with bright lights, where residents hosted street parties reveling in carols and nighttime picnics. The annual Festival of Lights at the Johannesburg Zoo captivated audiences, ushering in Christmas spirit.
Indeed, gifts of time and love are surely the basic ingredients of a truly Merry Christmas. Wishing you all a Merry Christmas ahead and festivities that will go on till the end of New Year. We wind up this edition of DD India Global now. Do let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. Connect with us on Facebook, X and Twitter, Instagram at DD India Live. I'm Tanvi Taneja from my entire team in New Delhi. Thank you for watching. Namaskar.